Hi-hat. Say hello. Hi-hat. Today is hi-hat. There's really not much to do for me personally. So, this one I already just put, the EQ where I want to put it. Just gonna let it play. Just for you to hear it. And then I'm just gonna flip the EQ on and tell you what I did. Matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you what I did, then put the EQ on. All right, so I don't like to take out too much because I know you're probably looking at this like, well, that looks like a lot. Well, it's not a lot for the hi-hat because all of this down here, unnecessary information in the hi-hat, channel. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and engage this, and as you can see, I took out all this because you don't need it. You don't need it. I did have it tailor off into the, I guess you could say, the lower part of the high mid section. And what I do in the high mids, in the high mid and the high section, is that, take that off. You know I don't like shelves. Take that off. Oh, matter of fact, put it back on because I did use it. Ha ha ha. Yeah. And in the high section, I basically went down to 2K and then shelved all of this down, attenuated it by like 4 dB. Why, you ask? For my personal taste, I don't like sharp, bright, piercing cymbals and hi-hats and rides and crashes. I don't like that tone. I don't like that piercing sound. Like, and that's my personal taste, but also a lot of people complain, oh, this is too loud. It's not loud. It's just piercing. They don't know exactly what it is, and they don't know how to explain what they're hearing. But when people say it's too loud, the first thing I do is I look through all my channels and see what channels are in the high registry range and what is boosted. And then normally what I would do is, because I don't like to change my mix, once I have my level set to where it is, I'm not changing that for nothing. Like, it has to be something very drastic for me to change my levels, because once it's set, I don't really like to keep touching. No. It's kind of like a barber. You know when the barber, fellas, you know when the barber touches up your shape up, but every 2 seconds he keep going back to that one spot. Yeah, the more he keep touching it, you know he's pushing the line back. So you kind of like move your head a little bit to like get him to understand, like, yo, you can move to the next section now. Yeah, that's the equivalent of this. You don't have to keep touching. Stop. Don't keep. No, once it's set, leave it. You don't got to keep touching a fader. Once the level is set and the mix is good, don't look to do too much after that. Just monitor your mix, right? Especially in live sound. Don't be too anal in live sound. Sometimes you just gotta let it flow. You can probably be a little bit anal in here because you want to get the perfect mix when you're using a DAW, when you're producing, you're in a studio or whatever. Fine, but not for live sound. I don't recommend that for live sound. Once you have it right, leave it. Let the mix breathe. Hopefully the musicians, they're letting the music breathe by not doing too much, just doing what each song requires of them. you know, throw in a little spice as well, you know, jazz it up a little bit. Cool. But yeah, don't keep touching your mix too much. That's not good. So when a lot of people complain, say, hey, it's too loud, it's usually there's an instrument or particular sound that's just very high in terms of the frequency spectrum, and that's what, and then the engineer probably already boosted it. So normally I just attenuate, I just cut out, I just find the thing that sounds, once they say it's heard in their ears, I know it's a piercing sound. So I go towards instruments that kind of pierces through, and then I check to see my EQ and how that's done. And if, like for instance, this is piercing and I bring it down, if I bring this down in a live mix and I can't hear it no more, then I raise my fader so I could hear it again. But now I know it's not piercing because I cut out the frequencies that's like very, you know, annoying to some people in the crowd, right? You know, sometimes these frequencies annoy me, so I do it on my own, and you know, it saves me a lot of time. But yeah, I don't do much for the hi-hat. This is kind of where it lives, and I leave it there, and I'm actually happy with that. One thing to note about your hi-hat is that it lives right next door to your snare. It's kind of like houses in New York. They're joined together. There's no separation. They are together. They are side by side, right? And understand that the way you EQ and mix your hi-hat can affect the not quality, but the tone of your snare as well. So for instance, I'm gonna let it play and then I'm gonna just change the EQ, and then you're gonna hear the difference between, you're gonna hear the relation between the hi-hat and the snare being so close proximity wise, and that what you do with the hi-hat can affect the snare. Watch. So now, in boosting a hi-hat, you kind of hear that the snare was slightly drowned out. But then when I attenuated, which means to cut, when I attenuated my high-end registry for the hi-hat, you hear the snare, you know, start to shine more. So it's best to be aware of what it is you're doing with your hi-hat. Because like once you already get your snare set and you're good with that, be mindful of what you're doing with your hi-hat so that it doesn't drastically affect what you did with your snare. Because you got the snare to a good place. The snare sounds fat, sounds deep. It's sounding clear. It's cutting through your mix. And then all of a sudden you do something with the hi-hat and then it's drowned out. Or the snare sounds too popish now because you raise your EQ on your hi-hat, and so now it sounds washed out. So just be careful of what it is you're doing with your hi-hat, because it lives right next door to the snare. And you know, just like for example, with joined houses, if one house catches on fire, the next house may catch on fire too. So be careful, right? So that's it for the hi-hat, really. And you know, I'm gonna just let it play out and catch you guys on the next one.